All right. Hello and welcome, everybody. This is, sorry, chapter 3, as you can see. Goodness. Okay, so this is chapter 3, and this is kind of just to guide us through this chapter. And the goal here is to cover the key concepts while also adding maybe a few examples from real life that you can see. So this chapter is really crucial to help you understand how companies operate within a global marketplace. And so first and foremost, I want to ask you, what do you think a global marketplace means? Go ahead.
Outside of the country as well as within.
Selling outside the country as well as within. What else? Agriculture. Why agriculture?
I know, like, for example, like there's certain stuff in like Asia or like Europe, you don't
Yeah,
even like certain fruits.
like jackfruits, for example, things like that. Okay, I like it. What else? What else do you guys got? Go ahead. Okay. So let's say if I'm a country and I have gold and you have fruits, can we exchange resources? Yes, something along those lines. So what I want you to do is take a look at this map. What do you think is going on here?
India and China is dominating every. That's the map of like everywhere.
Is that how the world looks like?
No.
Tell me what you think, and I'll tell you in what perspective. The population, okay. What else? What else do you see? Think it through for a little bit. So you've got China, and there's a lot of people there. Then you've got India. There's a lot of people there. In terms of a global marketplace.
Maybe since I mean most of our stuff are made in China and like Asia and stuff, maybe that's why like companies in America go over there to produce stuff or manufacture stuff because there's more people. That means there's more people looking for jobs, which means you can hire people for cheaper.
Okay.
That's why I'm thinking.
I like it. Okay, what else? Go ahead. They're all there. There's Russia. I know, so it doesn't look like an accurate representation of the world's geographical map, but the map here, it actually shows the population of the world. So I know you guys can't see this right here in the corner, but it says the world population, this is into 2018, and it says that the country size in this map represents the size of the population. So each square represents those little tiny squares that you see. Each square represents 500,000 people. All 15,266 squares show where the world's 7.6 billion people live. Okay, so this is, let me see actually if they have one for this year. It says, oops. This is where they have these statistics. Let me see if they have the population. It still should look relatively the same as what we're seeing here, but did I miss it? Did I miss it? Top right, population growth. Is that what we're looking for? Ah, there it is. You're right. There. It doesn't tell me what year, but essentially it looks the same.
Yeah.
This is still 2018. Okay. Yeah, you're right. It's right there. Okay. So it's just a better view of it. So you can kind of see all these things. With this mindset of this, the geographic location and population don't necessarily add up. What we're looking at maybe here is an opportunity where you can enter the marketplace in places where you didn't think you could enter the marketplace. Or expand to places where you didn't think it was actually a possibility to expand to. So when we look at the population of India, yes, you're right. You know, it's a great place to have work as well, but also it could be a great place to sell a product that is directed towards that market. It could be something like maybe you thought, okay, well, Russia is huge on the map, right? But the population of Russia is actually relatively small in compared to the actual country. So we have to take a look at these things. Now, the United States, I want to say, is number 3, right? So you've got China, you've got India, and then you've got the United States. Still a significant difference between the two. But just to show that there's an entire world. Look at how small Japan is on the map itself, right? But look how big it is here. It's relative to its size, it's relatively huge in population versus tiny in actual place. And so we are looking here at the population of the United States, for example, is relatively smaller than China and India, but it really just, it's fascinating how this type of thing actually shapes global trade. So countries like China and India are not only critical because of their size, but also because they play a major role in the economy. So we're not alone forming a global economy, we're part of a bigger system, okay? So yes, the US has a marketplace and it has a lot of really big things, but we have to open our world to our doors to the rest of the world. So there are opportunities out there. I know if you come from maybe an immigrant household, your parents came here for better opportunities that they may have not found in their home country. But the idea is that even here, you can still go out and look for opportunities as well. Okay, cool. And while within the United States. So the objective should be not for us to import so that we're paying, but really for us to export. The more we could export, the more we sell outside, the more our GDP grows as well. Cool? Yeah? Everyone on board? Okay. Now let's talk about why global trade is actually pretty essential for the US and how we can measure it. So the world population, we said, is about 7.9 billion people. That's what we were looking at in 2024. And the US represents about, can anyone guess about how much of the world's population is of the US? What do you guys think? 2%, you're very close. What is it, Ashton? 11%, we're closer to 2, but good guess. Very close. It's about 4% of the world's population. Okay, this means that the most of the world's market actually exists outside of the US border. So if your business is not thinking globally, then your business could be missing out. And your competitors are not making the same mistake. They're thinking, how can we grow internationally? What can we do? And how can we get people to support us enough for us to have a location, a satellite location somewhere else. So having this global vision is no longer just an option for us. It's actually something very, very necessary. The smartest companies don't just react to international business opportunities, they proactively engage in them. So what you want to do is you want to go out and you want to find these opportunities. And here's the thing, you guys, this is true of almost everything that we do. Opportunities don't just come to us for the most part, right? Things don't fall at our laps, whether in business or education or anything else. If we expect that, then we fall victim to the victim mentality. And the victim mentality says that, woe me, because I am not getting where I need to be. But then the question becomes, are you being proactive, seeking out ways to get to where you need to be, or are you stagnant where you are, lamenting over where you want to be rather than where you are today? Okay? Same thing holds true for businesses. So you have to look at, not just look at domestic markets, but look at foreign competitors. Leverage global supply chain and distribution networks. So maybe you're thinking, okay, well, Poland is a great place. Okay, I want to sell hats in Poland. Well, what does Poland, if you're able to enter that market, Poland actually gets you access to the rest of the EU. It gets you access to the rest of the European Union. So if you enter Poland, while it's significantly harder to the first country, it becomes easier to build a network and be able to create strategic partnerships that get you to move forward. Cool? Yeah? Okay. My notes and my things are a little bit off. All right, so if you're looking at this map, you're kind of looking at, this is, I want to say it's the Coca-Cola one. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so the percentage of sales for Coca-Cola outside the US, this is where it looks like. So they are a company that expands beyond, right? It's everywhere in the world. But you can see the distribution. You can see that the majority of the sales aren't happening just within the United States. You've got 20% in North America, 27% in Latin America, 30% in Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and 23% in Asia Pacific. So while we may think, oh, well, Coca-Cola is an American drink, it's actually global. So you're looking at things like companies like Nike or Starbucks, which are both American companies, right? I think Nike is an American company. Yeah. And they expanded into these international markets. But what they do is they customize for local tastes. Anyone been to McDonald's outside of the US? Okay, tell me, where have you gone? Where have you gone to McDonald's, Noor?
Oh, Germany, Australia, and Canada.
Okay, well, I'll come back to you in a second. Everyone else, where have you gone?
Mexico and Fiji.
Mexico and Fiji, okay. Where? In Vietnam, okay, what else? Colombia. Anyone else been to, yes. Saudi Arabia. What was something that you noticed about McDonald's in the US versus McDonald's in Fiji or McDonald's in Vietnam or Pakistan? Different menu, right? Okay, what did you find where some of the stuff where you're like, oh, this is cool? Did you see anything in Saudi Arabia? The cheese was different. How so? Is it what? Real cheese? I love that. Okay, what else? Go ahead.
They would have like their own, like they sell like their own ice cream and stuff.
Right? Like different flavors that you wouldn't find here.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a different chocolate bit, like a different ice cream bar, and then the other part would just be like a regular McDonald's.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, what else?
Well, I was about to say, I know, I eat some like eggs, spam, and rice.
Okay. It's in the country, but it's different, right? Okay. What else?
Like all of their like lemonades and iced teas were sparkling. I didn't like that. And it was a lot cheaper.
In which part? In Mexico or in Fiji? Okay.
It just
Mexico's
tasted
is,
like
yeah, Mexico's is relatively the same, I think, for the most part. Okay, and what did you see that was different
So I
in
just
Europe?
noticed they tasted better, less preservatives or something. I don't know. They must have better resources everywhere.
And yeah, so if you go to like France or whatever, you'll find like they have an entirely different menu. Like all this vegan stuff that I'm like, whoa, this is wonderful. And sometimes it's higher quality because of the laws and the regulations that they have. And so you can find that something as simple as McDonald's, where you're like, okay, it was just McDonald's, it's really nothing, is this fast food chain. When they expanded into this global market, they actually included things that were specific to that place. So I don't know if like in Saudi Arabia, maybe there was like a specific drink that they had that was very much to that culture, or maybe in the sparkling waters, because Europeans love their sparkling water, right? The first time I went to Poland, they're like, "What, do you want water?" And they came back with the sparkling water. I'm like, this is not what I wanted. Okay. Now I've fallen in love with sparkling water, and that's a whole different story. But it's these experiences where you go and you expect the same things that you find here, but it's actually a completely different market. And as you enter this global market, you'll find things in the Middle East, for example, in soda that you wouldn't find here. And so, or vice versa as well. So you're looking at things that are customizable as well. I don't know if it's in this lecture, if we talked about it. Do you guys remember the Coca-Cola's personalized campaign? Yeah, the one with your name. Okay, I don't know if they have them. This one?
Think of all that we could do if we started with me and you. And I'll keep coming back around. Hey, some things are meant to be explained. Summer's calling out to clouds of rain. And I'll keep coming back around. I'll keep coming back around.
Do you guys remember this campaign? Yeah? Okay. So if you look at this campaign, you'll find that there are different names on, bless you, there are different names on the Coca-Cola cans. But this campaign was actually a worldwide campaign. It wasn't just a one-time, like a one country thing. And so what that meant is, if you look at, let's say, the Arab population, I want to say the number one name in the Arab world is Muhammad, right? It's not a frequent name in America. So when you looked at the bottles in the stores, that wasn't one of the names you found readily. But when you looked in places like Lebanon or Saudi Arabia or anywhere in the Middle East, if you're looking for a bottle, it had that name as one of them. Just like when you go to you know, the shops where they sell you like the keychains. Sometimes you find your names. If you have a unique name, you don't find your name and you're like, oh, no one's ever so-and-so. I can't find it. Okay. And so what they do is they follow the trends, they follow the population, and they customize their products, even their campaigns, based on the global market that they're in. Do you see how it plays out? So this is also part of their expansion. While Coca-Cola had obviously expanded way before then, it was a campaign that meant to reconnect the people with something that they love and gets you to think about someone else, right? How many times do you send a reel to your friends? Okay, you see someone, a reel, a TikTok, something, you're like, oh my gosh, this reminds me of so-and-so, I gotta send it to them. Okay, just 2 people. Just 2 people. All right, that's what I thought. Okay. And so you see something, you're like, oh, I actually want to share this. And the entire idea is to find the marketplace, find the market in this global landscape and be able to reach it based on ways that would allow people to create communities. Okay? All right. Mhm. Let me say I'm second. All right. So now let's look at this broader picture. So in the US, trades make up maybe about 28% of the GDP, which is gross domestic product from the world trades. So that might seem low compared to countries like Germany or China, where you have over 50% of their GDP, depending on trades, but it is still quite a significant portion. So here's the question for you. Where do you think the US ranks as the net exporter? What is it? So if they are going to export somewhere, where do you think would be the top place? Or okay, so you've got countries that export the most, right? And if you're ranking this and you have, what is it, the US at 28%, where do you think it ranks in the countries? So is it number 1, number 2, number 7, number 17? Out of all the countries that are out there. So we saw this per population, right? We saw this and we're like, okay, a lot of our stuff comes from China or a lot of our stuff comes from India. And we just said that Germany and China have a 50% gross domestic, gross domestic product. So that means that they are exporting very heavily into the world. Below 10%, so not in the top 10% of the countries exporting. Okay, what else? What other guesses do we have?
Bottom percent.
The bottom percent, okay, because they only have 28% exporting rate. Yeah. Right, so 28% for the US, that's what we have. We have 55% for Great Britain and Germany and France. They're exporting more. Okay. And so the US has to be in the bottom 10%. What else do we have? What do you guys think? Throw a number. It doesn't have to be right. It's a guessing game at this point. Somewhere around 30. So the top 30%? Yeah? As in compared to the entire world, right? So as a number of what? In ranking
Like 29 other countries.
are above it. Okay. Okay, so number 30. Number 30 on the list.
40.
40, okay. Why do you say 40? Yeah. Okay, 30.
Yeah, I think it's the bottom, like 25, 30%.
Okay. Actually, fun fact, the US is the second largest exporter in the world, behind China. So yes, you see a 28% exporting rate versus 55 in Great Britain or whatever other countries, Germany, China, all these places that have a much higher GDP. The US actually exports about $1.5 trillion worth of goods
Also,
each
we're talking
year.
about money, we're not talking about percent.
Well, we're talking about what,
Because it's not different.
okay. So what we're doing, what initially we were saying is that of all their gross domestic product, 28% of the US GDP comes from exporting. Okay? Whereas for China, it's more than 50. Okay? So we produce product here and then we ship it out somewhere else and we sell it globally.
So 20% like high.
28%, it looks like it's small, but it's actually, so we say, okay, everything comes from China, right? That's what we're saying. But that's not true. So China is number one, yes, but the US in exporting, it's number two. So the US actually exports if you add up all the things that it exports $1.5 million worth of goods each year. And that puts it above Germany that has more than 55%. So you may think or hear in the media that the US is still like, it's not like the GDP is not growing or all that stuff, but it's actually still a major manufacturing force for the world. You'd consider Apple, but you'd also, one of the biggest exporters is actually Boeing. So Boeing plays a huge role in maintaining this rank. And so, because they do a lot of aircrafts, right? So and the world needs them.
So it's like 5.
Ooh, I don't know. Let's find out. I don't know. Who has the... It could be us. The United States. Imports the most from the US, like buys the most from the US.
Like, I just want to know who like buys the most
Stuff, the US. So the US imports, this is why the GDP is so off too. They import about $3.17 trillion worth of goods, and they export about 1.5 trillion. That's where the discrepancy comes into place. Okay? No, obviously, right? They're importing, not obviously, but no, they don't. It comes from China, a lot of it. Other top importing companies, okay, let's find out.
Did you say we export 1.5 trillion and import 13?
3.5, 3.75. Okay, Mexico is the top importer to the United States, followed by Canada and China. So a lot of our stuff comes from Mexico. Let's find out. This is cars. Let's see. No, I don't want any of them. I don't want any of them. They'll show up. Confirm my choices. Okay. So top 10 US goods imports in 2023. We've got passenger cars, pharmaceutical preparation, crude oil, automotive parts and accessories, cell phones and other household goods, electrical apparatus, computers, telecommunication equipment, other machinery, semiconductors. Okay, where does it tell me it's from?
It's kind of based on this.
Yeah.
So is that why like the stock market crashed during like after the war because like all the economy, like the countries were like guess like fighting with each other.
Which war?
Economy just crashed. or-
Which war?
Huh?
Which war?
Oh, no. The one that happened, when like the stock market crashed.
In 2008.
I think it was after the second war. I'm not too sure. I'm not really.
The Great Depression?
There was no stuff.
I don't know. Hold on. I don't know. Let's find out.
Because what- that-
Wars affect, yes, absolutely. So like, I want to say, what was it? The price of potatoes or the price of grains went up all over Europe because of the Russia-Ukraine war, I think.
Like the word.
No, I'm
Oh,
talking
like-
like a world war or something. Well, like even a war was could affect like, the economy.
Yeah, it does.
Okay. So yes, absolutely. Wars affect economies 1000%. We can see this as a live example. So the price of grains, so practically wheat, significantly increased due to the war in Ukraine and Russia, because both Russia and Ukraine are major exporters of grain. And that means that they're in conflict, they're fighting with each other. Nobody's taking care of the grains. It's not getting processed. It's not getting exported. Things are not running as they as they should. So both Russia and Ukraine are among the world's top wheat exporters, making them crucial players in the global market gains. And so what you're looking at, the entire market across the board got influenced by this. Okay, so different countries that have nothing to do with the war, but imported a lot from Russia and Ukraine, got a price jack. Okay. They had to pay more. Absolutely. They had to pay more because it's a higher, like there's a higher demand and lower presence. So yeah.
Is that what kind of happened?
I don't know why the price of eggs went up. I still don't understand why.
It was like the.
It could have been, yeah, something it was like a bird flu, or I don't think the chickens stopped making eggs. I think they stopped. There was something in.
Yeah.
We can ask, why did the price? Us in Googling today, eggs go up. But that one is not it's a supply chain thing, but I don't think it's a global market thing. Like I think it's a domestic US thing. It could be influenced by other factors as well that leads to things like secondary factors, but it's not a global market issue. So yes, so the bird flu caused egg shortage, and loss of egg laying hens due to bird flu has created significant shortage in egg supply, impacting the market availability of eggs. And that's why the price also went up, but it was also,
Like upping prices is technically not ethical, right? But then in this instance, like you need to cut the price in order to sustain business, like a successful business. You get what I'm saying? Like
I do, it's an iffy topic. It's like it's a blurred line. How much is too much upping the prices and how much is the percentage that it's going up? So like the price of coffee before was $1. The price of gas was $1.50. It's, I don't know, 40 years ago. And so it went up, but everything else went up as well. Yes, but also the rates in which like they have these reports where they show prices of why millennials can't buy houses.
back then, like you had a lot of money. And now 100K is like middle class, or like less than middle class.
Last week, did you guys talk about price ceiling and price floor?
No, we talked about ethics, but we'll get to things like this.
Like, talk about
Okay.
jobs is unethical, but at the same time, it's not ethical, but at the same time, ethic and business doesn't really correlate with each other.
Yeah.
I feel like it does, but it doesn't.
Yeah, I don't know where, I'm looking for like those pictures that kind of show the differences in prices. But I can't find it. But yeah, like the percentage in which everything went up and the house market went up is completely different. And so what the person that could afford a house when they were 23 in the 60s, their children can't afford that right now because the pricing is so different, plus loans, plus everything that went into it. Okay. All right, so this is if you're looking at visualizing the world's biggest exporters in 2017. So you can kind of, I know it's an older map, but this is how it would look like in terms of money, right? So the China exported 2.2 billion, and the United States exported 1.5 billion. And you can see compared, so Germany is a huge exporter, and even like the biggest, some of the biggest countries, they dwindle when it comes to these things, and this is why their economy isn't growing as much. Okay. Okay, so trade isn't just about money, you guys. It's also about building relationships. So when you're talking about trades, we're looking at international trades that really just strengthen the bonds and ties between different countries. What it does is it reduces tension and it helps raise living standards around the world. This is why when you have policies like right now that where we're looking at banning things from Canada or increasing the tariffs on Canada drastically unless something happens, this is why it's so impactful because it can actually affect both countries. It can have an impact on one side more than on the other, and it can strengthen the ties.
Having like other countries try to take over another
Mhm.
country.
It does. It does. In a lot of different ways, it does. So think about, the computer we're using right now to look at the presentation. Think about where it was made. Did all of the parts from the computer come from the US? Is this something that was made here? If you looked maybe a few years ago, you had the iPhone used to say designed in California. I don't know if you guys remember this. On the back, it used to very specifically say, yeah, right? Okay, so if you look at images, right, you can see designed by Apple in California. Bless you. You can see this. I don't know if it's still there on these ones. I don't know if anyone has their AirPods with them, and you can check on the AirPod if it says that or not. Go ahead. It still says designed in California. Bless you. So what they're trying to say is that, hey, actually, we're here. This is where it came from, and that kind of signals to the U.S. consumers that something, right? Like, this is a intelligence quality I can trust, and so forth. So yes, it does strengthen the relationships, but also, going back to the iPhone, it wasn't assembled here, but it was designed here. Then someone took this design and assembled it somewhere else. And they brought parts from different parts of the world that made sense, and it all came together. All of these components, they were able to come together because there is this interconnectedness that is actually possible. Okay?
How does like certain companies regulate and follow certain rules like to like different countries? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
like how can like people, how do companies even, I'm just thinking about that, I'm like, oh, what if I start a company in Asia, for example, and I'm over here and then I don't follow their regulations because, like, there's a law. And then what if I get sued by a company in Asia or something like that? How do companies deal with that?
I don't know the intricacies of it, but I would say that you have to follow the rules and regulations of the country where you're registered in, and then the rules of the countries of importing, exporting, or doing business in that country as well. And so, for example, let's say I'm an American and I go, yeah, go ahead.
How it switched Type C because of the European Union.
Yes, absolutely.
But what if they don't? Then does the European country stop allowing Apple to import?
Yes. Yes, 1000%.
I was like, wow.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Okay. So for example, then you have trade agreements like the Trans-Pacific Partnerships, which aims to reduce trade barriers and strengthen economies between nations. And these agreements, like the NAFTA that was here, they changed the name a while ago. I can't remember the acronym for it anymore, which was the North American Trade Agreement. These agreements, they increase market access for companies and ensure smoother international trades relations. It makes it easier for companies to actually partner together, to move things across, to be able to enter markets in a lot of an easier way. So part of the problem is right now with, let's say, Canada, is that a lot of the border between, anyone here been to Michigan? Okay, Windsor, Canada and Michigan are right at the border. You go from one side of the river, it takes you 5 minutes, you're now in Canada. That's it, essentially, okay? It's so easy to enter there. It's so easy for them to come back here. Obviously, you do have to go to the checkpoint. You do have to go through customs. You have to go through that. But nevertheless, it's that easy. So now that you have things like that, imagine like things that are being imported and exported, where one thing is made in, and Michigan is a huge producer of cars, right? That's what they're known for. They're like the hubs in the US for cars, right? So you have Michigan who's producing these cars, but there's a lot of parts that are crossing the border multiple times. Things that are produced in Canada, that are done in Canada to the car and to the part, and then come back to the US, and then go from the US to Canada. And it goes, because it was like such a smooth transition. So now that that's there, you're looking at maybe if that car part crosses 100 times, then you have to pay taxes 100 times on those parts, right? So with trade agreements, it's easier for you to go and say, okay, well, this is that, and this, it comes back, right? We get a lot of avocados from Mexico. It's easy to do that because the trade agreement between the US and Mexico allows for this to happen. Now, there are certain things that in a certain quota, so that it doesn't damage the economy that's here. So you can only have a certain amount of avocados coming in from Mexico. The rest have to be grown here. That makes sense? Okay, but these agreements, they help facilitate that movement. All right, so let's define some terms that we have. You've got exports, and exports are goods and services that are produced in one country and sold to another country. Okay, that's what exports are. The next thing that we have is the opposite, and the opposite of export is, what do you guys think? Import, right? It's in the beginning of the word. What does the word port mean? Where do you see the word port before? What is it? Go ahead. Sorry, I know you said something. Boat, okay. Yeah. So airport, right? The port where you have, right? It's all the same origin. Then you have port where the ships are coming in and they're stopping. Port in French means door. So this is the doorway, okay? So import, it's coming into the port, it's coming into the door. Export is outside, okay? And so you can kind of see in the word itself what we're trying to do. the difference between what you export and what you import is known as a balance of trade. Now, if you export more than you import, you have a trade surplus, so you're gaining. If the opposite is true, like what we have here right now, you have a trade deficit. So right now, the US runs on a trade deficit, which means we actually import more than what we export.
So what that means for the
I don't think so. And it could be a small country and it's having more export. Mhm. No, the idea is that if let's say it's a small country and it's exporting X amount of things, relative to its population, relative to how much it's exporting, it could be importing or exporting more. Does that make sense? But it's a small country. So it could have a surplus and other countries could have a surplus, but it's just because it's small, we're not seeing it huge on the map. So like China is, I don't think China has a surplus anyways, but let's see. To ask our friend Google. I see it. Fine. There you go. 20 countries with the highest trade surplus in 2023. Let's see. China, Germany, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Netherlands, Brazil, Australia, Norway, Taiwan, Qatar, Ireland, and Switzerland. They all have a surplus. And some of these, like Qatar is a relatively small country compared to the other ones, right? And so Russia, compared to its surplus, is also pretty small compared to how much is actually the surplus is. And I probably would say it's the cars, right? The VW, the BM, those are German cars, right? And they're exporting a lot of this stuff. So the US is at a trade deficit, which means we import more than we export, but this looks like a problem, right? It looks like we have a problem, but that might not actually be the case. So trade deficits don't just exist because you're importing and exporting certain products. There's actually a variety of reasons where you could have that, including the country's role in the supply chain. So you have the supply chain and where things are at, which parts you're getting from where, and then you export the final product, and that could be sold at a higher price, which then gives the country more money. Does that make sense? The value of the product that's being sold. So you could be importing a part that costs $1 to make, and then selling a final product that includes that part that's $100 to make.
It's like Logan companies buy like blank hoodies or shirts from like China.
Yeah.
Then come back, print like the design on it and sell it for like.
Exactly. Yes, but now we can imagine you're selling that shirt, that design in Europe. Okay. So yes, you imported the jacket or the shirt for the sweater for $10 per sweater. You sold it for $70 in Europe. Okay. So that would be the trade deficit is not equal. It's not a one-to-one because what you're exporting is valued at a lot of a higher price than what you're importing. So we can import material to manufacture the products we export. And so the relationship between import and export is more complex than just a number on a page, okay? And that's kind of what you were saying with the sweaters. Another thing is that the US actually manufactures intellectual export properties. Okay, so it's the leader in intellectual property exports. So What do you think that is? Okay. What else? What's intellectual property? Ideas. Okay. Music.
Digital stuff.
Exactly. Software, entertainment, and pharmaceuticals. So the compositions of the medications, things like that. Those are all intellectual properties. Okay. So countries like Germany and South Korea also have a significant trade surplus through export of high quality manufactured goods like cars and electronics. So on the other side, we have a very high, sorry?
The, so beauty products.
Yeah. But high quality beauty products, right? Not just, you know, whatever thing that they have. So a trade deficit, again, it may seem negative, more money leaving the country than coming in, but the reality is it's far more nuanced than that. So in our interconnected world that you see, global trade is actually essential for economic health. So a lot of goods we export are made from imported components. So for example, when you had the global recession, countries depended heavily on trades that were more affected because when the trade slowed, so did their economy, okay? So like what you were saying, when there's a crash in the market, it affects global trades because some countries depend on that. And there's this interdependency that highlights both the opportunity and the risk of global trade, okay? Okay, so why trade at all? What's the point? So this entire concept is there's something called absolute advantage, and it's very simple. A country can produce something more efficiently than others, okay? There's a Arabic proverb that says, give your bread to the baker, give your dough to the baker, even if he eats half of the bread. And the idea is if you give them the dough, they will know how to make bread. Even if they take half of it, you still have half of bread. Whereas if the dough remains with you and you don't know how to cook it, or it's going to take you 6-7 hours to cook it or to bake it, you're not going to end up with the bread, right? Or you're not going to end up with as high of quality as bread. So then you have, very simple, there is something called absolute advantage where a country can produce something more efficiently than others. So think, for example, the Democratic Republic of Congo dominates the market for minerals, for electronics like smartphones, okay? So it's a particular mineral vital for this electronic smartphone. But comparative advantage, so sorry, I'm losing where I was at. All right, so they have that. Their country already produces it. Their land produces it. They have a competitive advantage. So then you go to the Democratic Republic of Congo and you buy these things, okay? Because, well, the US may not be able to produce that in here, right? Same thing goes with gas, okay? People had to buy, or countries had to buy oil or gas from Saudi Arabia. And this is how Saudi Arabia became extremely wealthy, because there was a wealth of natural gases that were there, natural oils that were there. So because it had this advantage, people bought from it and then it grew, and then its economy grew. So globalization is usually this hot topic, especially when you have economic turndowns that are not very prosperous, right? So on one side, globalization offers lower prices, more options, more choices, and really just rapid innovations. On the other hand, It causes anxieties about job security, so people are afraid of other people taking their jobs, and maybe national industries, replacing the industries that are there in the national level. So, for example, some believe that cutting imports of cars from Japan and Mexico would boost the U.S. jobs. But that is a valid concern. It would increase jobs, but it can also overlook the fact that producing those cars domestically would drastically change the cost of that car and making it unaffordable for consumers. So the option is, do you want to buy a car or do you want to have a job? And then if you have the jobs here and no one's buying the cars, then there are no jobs because your product is not selling. So you enter into this dilemma, okay? So tariffs might seem like a quick fix. Tariffs are taxes that are placed on different borders internationally, right? But they can trigger a cascade of consequences. So such as high price increases or a decrease in competitiveness. And so this is what we're looking at with these things, okay? All right, so some benefits, you're looking at productivity grow more quickly when countries produce goods and services which they have comparative advantage in. Things get done faster, right? If you hire someone with experience in marketing, they're able to market your company a lot faster than someone who doesn't have experience and has to learn how to market. Make sense? Okay. So when you go to the countries with comparative advantage, that's what you're looking at. I'll come back to this one. Times it. One second. I lost where I was at. Okay, so you have something called barriers to trade, and barriers to trade come from in a variety of different forms. When you hear the words barrier to trade, what do you think it is? What do you think it means? What is it? Rules? Okay. What else? What's a barrier?
Helps or prevents.
Something that stops or prevents. So barrier to trade are things that stop or prevent trades from happening within different countries. Some of these trades are physical and some of these trades are artificial. When we're talking about physical barriers, you're looking at things like mountains or oceans, things that make trade more expensive, okay? It is a lot easier for me to get to Mexico than it is for me to get to Peru, right? So Peru is a lot harder for me to trade with than it is for Mexico because simply the barriers of trades that exist. So for example, if you're shipping beef from Argentina to Europe, it incurs high costs because there's a high distance that is involved. And so that's what you're looking at. But there's also something called artificial barriers. And those are things that are artificially placed, like tariffs and quotas. So governments have to protect domestic industries by making imported goods more expensive to protect the market that they currently have so that they're not easy to penetrate. So for example, let's say the US imposes quota on Mexico avocados to protect California growers. Okay, so people in California, they're growing their avocados. But if they're being shipped, if labor is cheaper in Mexico and the avocados are being shipped from Mexico and it's cheaper than the ones growing here, then the people who are growing their avocados here lose their business. So what the US does is that it imposes this quota on how many avocados could be imported to the US. Okay. So when they do that, it reduces the supply that's available, drives up prices through basic supply and demand principle. So this isn't a tariff. They're not putting extra taxes on them. But it has this similar effect on the market because it's limiting the amount that could actually come in. Okay, cool. All right. So now we're looking at something called dumping. And dumping is a controversial trade practice where a company sells product in a foreign market below market prices, sometimes even at a loss to destroy local competition. Okay? So once the competition is completely eliminated, what do? They up the price. Exactly. It's back. Exactly. But it's called dumping because they're annihilating the competition. Why? To raise up prices for themselves later. So to combat this, countries like the US have something called anti-dumping laws. And these anti-dumping laws, they impose penalties on companies found guilty of this practice. Okay, so if they see a company that is doing that in the US, they actually have to pay fines and they are sued. So dumping is a tactic where that is often used by large multinational companies, corporations, to gain market dominance, and it's affordable for them. Yeah, they're going to lose, but they know that if they take out the competition, they'll gain a lot more money. Okay? And it can have really a devastating effect on the local economy. And part of the reason why it could have this devastating effect is because, well, imagine you have a job and then someone comes in and they sell the same product or service you do at a much, much lower price. They're losing money for it. And they are, so you're no longer selling. You have no other replacement jobs. So you're fired. You have no other replacement job because, well, the entire market is crashing for your industry. It becomes very devastating for all these companies to close, okay, for the local market. Then we have the WTO, which is the World Trade Organization, and that plays a crucial or a critical role in overseeing trade agreements and settling disputes between countries. So what happened is after World War II, the world recognized the economic conflict between could be as damaging as military ones. Okay, so I think that's the war you were referring to. So there's military damage, but also there's economic damage that comes as a result of the war. And so what they did is they created something called the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trades, which then eventually became what is known today as the World Trade Agreement. World Trade Organization. And the World Trade Organization's dispute resolution process is actually pretty critical for maintaining a fair trade practice globally. So countries that violate this agreement can actually face sanctions, and that ensures that the rules of the global trades are actually followed. Otherwise, they will be sanctioned. Yes.
What if the company, like, for example, like, let's just say like MacBook, for example, right?
Mhm.
Let's just say
Apple,
me-
Mac,
Apple,
yeah.
No, just say like the MacBook.
Okay.
Let's just say me, like I come up with an idea or something or whatever, and I know how to make a better laptop for cheaper than Microsoft and Apple,
Mhm.
and then I sell it for like much cheaper, like, let's just say like 300 for retail. which is
Okay.
Super cheap, right?
Yeah.
Would that technically consider me like dumping?
No. Dumping would be, you have $1,000 laptop. You're selling that $1,000 laptop for $300 intentionally to drive out business.
But it would be intentional, because I know people.
Well, no, but you are not losing and you're not lowering the price so that you could lose. So that you can eliminate them so that they can gain.
But he's not a foreign competitor, he's
Well, yes, but
benefiting.
but we're assuming,
Yeah.
we're assuming in this scenario, you're a foreign competitor.
But when this, all this for foreign?
Yes. Otherwise, you're entering the market, just normally entering the market. So you do that and you take it, you create something in the US and you go sell it in Mexico. But you don't just go sell it to Mexico, in Mexico. You go and look at the prices in Mexico and say, okay, I am going to sell my product at $300, even though it costs me $500 to produce it. So I'm losing $200 per laptop, so that once everyone start buying my laptop and the local ones are no longer producing, I will hike my price up to 1,000.
That was something. But they gave Rise out for free, and they just paid the drivers, and then that's how they build up their clientele or like their customers. I'm pretty sure that's how Uber became successful.
But Uber it's a marketing strategy from the US. Like they did this in the US. And they did this as, well, no, they did it as a promotional way of gaining customers. Like it's almost as if me saying you get 20% off, right? They did the first 5 rides free, okay? The first 2 rides free, whatever the case is, okay? To establish credibility. They don't have that anymore, right? They do that for Uber Eats now, every once in a while, but that's just a promotion. They're not trying to, they're trying to win customers, but they're not trying to eliminate Lyft or taxi. Make sense? Okay. So it's essential to distinguish between the World Bank and the International Monetary Funds that you guys see. And so the World Bank focuses on long-term investments, long-term development projects, providing low-interest loans to developing countries for infrastructure improvements. And then you have the International Monetary Fund, and those ones, they offer short-term financial assistance to countries that are facing economic crisis. One second. Okay. That are facing economic crisis, a crisis to kind of bail them out, okay? Those are things that help foster global trades. All right. So some international economic communities, you have trade blocs like what was called NAFTA before is now called the USMCA, which I believe US, Mexico, Canada agreement. That's what it was. And blocs like the European Union are essential for facilitating trades by removing tariffs and quotas between membrane countries. So the US's larger trading partner is actually Canada. And that makes sense because of the proximity, okay, where we are with them, and also the cultural similarities. So you can say that Mexico, have anyone been to Mexico? Okay, great. Is it like the US? Does it look like US? Does it feel like the US? No. Has anyone been to Toronto? Toronto, Canada, does it feel like it's the US? Very much so, right? There's very difference between hanging out again in Michigan versus Windsor. Okay, maybe you get poutine on the other side. If you haven't had poutine, go get some. I don't know if there's a place that sells them here. They are delightful. Best thing you could have. Okay, anyways. Canada and the US have a very similar culture, which makes even trades with them a lot easier, because the same products that work here, for the most part, they work in Canada. Okay, and there's really no difference in language. You have to, by Canadian law, you have to put things in French and in English, because the official languages are both French and English, and there's an entire province in Canada that speaks French primarily. But nevertheless, you're talking about barriers that are not that great. Okay, and so it makes trading with them a lot easier, and it makes it a strategic partner. Yes. Yes. So you'd have to write them in French. You don't have to learn French, right? If you yourself are not going to do business there. But you would have to, any product that is sold in the US and in in Canada, you will see that they have, even things that are produced here, I believe they'll have both languages on there. That's why you'll find like a lot of the shampoos, a lot of even berries. I think we export a lot of berries to Canada from California. And so you'll see it on there. It says things in French as well. Okay. Okay. So let's talk about how businesses can actually participate in the global marketplace. Exporting in its simplest form is selling your domestic products or services to foreign markets. So if you're a small business owner, you want to look at exporting, a great resource for you is export.gov. I want to say they changed the name. I don't remember what it is now. Hold on. No? Okay, it's still export.gov. Okay. If I remember correctly, there was at one point consultations that they used to do to help people start exporting outside the US. I don't know if they still use that now, but there should be like a ton of resources that helps people do that as well. Okay, none of this wants to work. I don't know why. Is it like an old website? What is this? That makes more sense. I think it's called Trade. That's what I thought. Trade.gov. That's what it is right now. Okay. So if you look through here, you'll be able to find a lot of like resources and things like that to help you do that and to help you export outside of the US. So begin your journey, new exporters, so businesses planning and negotiating sales contracts, whatever. There's a ton of things that they could help you prepare and do so that you can take your business to the next level. And I absolutely love this stuff about the US is that you can find these resources, and these resources are possible for you. It's fantastic.
So everything that gets exported or like already controlled by most of the main companies?
No. Like we said, there's a lot of different, where's the map? If we go back to the map that we were looking at the beginning, there's opportunities everywhere, right? So for example, we have my friend who was born here, grew up here, decided to go study in Lebanon for about a year or so. And when she went, she found, sorry, Ziploc brands that are not Ziploc. I don't know what else to call them, but Ziplocs in Lebanon that are made in the US that you don't necessarily see on the shelves here, right? So they found opportunities to actually export them there. They found opportunities to make them and export them. And so they didn't have to penetrate the market that's here because it's very hard to penetrate, but it was easier for them to be able to produce them at a cheaper price here and ship them overseas and sell them in Lebanon. And they're US based. right? So there's a lot of things that you have to think outside of the box, and you have to think, and sometimes you have to trial and error a lot of things, but the really amazing thing about the US is you have these resources available to you, which a lot of countries don't have. I'm gonna say that, and to be fair, like if you're looking to start a business, the US is a great place to do that. Not just because of what it is, but the support that it provides, okay? All kinds of things, incredible. Mm. Okay. Did I miss one? Okay. So contract manufacturing, there we go. Contract manufacturing involves hiring a foreign company to produce goods and services on your behalf. So this strategies allowed businesses to take advantage of lower production cost or specialized manufacturing capabilities abroad. Apple, for example, uses contract manufacturers like Foxconn in China to assemble its products. Then other ways to do this is licensing and franchising, which allows the McDonald's is a franchise. And so what they do is it's a legal process where the licensor agrees to let another firm, the licensee, use their manufacturing process, their trademarks, their patents, their trade secrets, and so forth. The next one you have is joint ventures, and these are partnerships where two or more companies create new business entities together, and they share these resources, they share risks, and they share profits. So an example is Sony Ericsson, a joint venture, and they're a joint venture Japan Sony with the Sweden Ericssons, and they've then since become Sony Mobile, right? But at one point they became Sony Ericsson, and then they became Sony Mobile. And this partnership combined Sony's consumer electronic expertise with Ericsson's telecommunication knowledge. And so they joined the ventures that they have, okay? Foreign direct investment is when a company invests directly in facilities or operating in another country. And this can include building factories, acquiring businesses, or establishing subsidiaries. So for example, Toyota has a manufacturing plant in the US. It employs American workers and contributes to the local economy. So that is a foreign direct investment. They're investing in the foreign market that they're trying to enter into, or they are already there. So when looking at global trades, there are certain things that you have to consider. So you're looking at political consideration, you're looking at nationalism that can lead to protecting policies, tariffs, things like that, import quotas, which can higher the market entry barrier or like your ability to enter. Cultural differences is a big one as well. So again, we talked about McDonald's having different kind of things for different cultures. That is all accounted for. And then you're looking at economic environment. So the level of economic development varies considerably in different parts of the world. And those are things that would create barriers to you actually entering. And the last thing we're going to talk about today is multinational corporations. And these are companies that operate on global scales. So things like Amazon, Microsoft, and Coca-Cola are not only generate vast revenues, but also they shape the industry. They shape the industry standards. They shape the consumer expectations around the world. Okay. So those would be multinational corporations. All right. So that is it for this lectures. If you have any questions, please let me know.